What's your approach to lighting? Because
as natural as possible.
As natural as possible.
Sourced as possible. You know, if there's a window, I try to use the window. I'll walk into a location space before we're shooting and see what it's like. And
so if you were lighting this, you probably would have used these as your main sources.
Probably, yeah.
No criticism of it. We heard his feelings. Welcome back to Craft Truck Through the Lens. We have with us today a cinematographer at the height of his game, somebody who's made beautiful, beautiful naturalistic pictures through a very long career that has taken him to some great places and done some great pictures, Mr. Roberto Schaefer.
Hi,
thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me here.
So the films you've shot with Marc Forster.
First one was called Loungers.
Okay.
And it was no budget.
Yeah.
We shot it with my Aton, and it got shown at Slam Dance, the first Slam Dance. It won the audience award at Slam Dance, but it couldn't get released because they couldn't get the music rights.
It never got released because of the music rights?
Never got released because of the music rights.
Tell me, what's the story of Loungers?
It's basically two guys and actually two couples, and one guy, they have this scam. They want to produce an album of lounge music. They want to be lounge singers. And they decide that to get the money, they're going to kill the parents because they're sort of like sick or, you know,
so the insurance
Alzheimer's
money
or whatever. They're going to get the insurance money to make the record. It was some actors who've become known and gone on to, you know, not giant fame, but substantial careers since then. And Marc, of course, has gone on to his substantial career.
Huge, substantial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we did another movie called Everything Put Together.
Right.
Which I think the budget was $50,000 or $75,000.
Uh-huh.
Something like that. And we shot that on mini DV.
Wow.
We were trying to, you know, get into that whole
aesthetic.
And it was one of the first that was done that way. And it got blown up to 35 and got a theatrical release for a short time.
You shot Monsters Ball.
Then we did Finding Neverland.
Finding Neverland, great,
then
beautiful
we did
picture.
Stay.
Stay, yeah.
Which is one of my favorites.
Uh-huh.
Nobody's seen it, but it's one of my favorites.
Yes. Yeah.
Then we did, after Stay, I think we did Stranger Than Fiction.
Right, which is another great picture.
Then we did The Kite Runner.
Mm-hmm.
Then we did Quantum of Solace. Then we did Machine Gun Preacher.
Right.
I think that was the last one. It's like 8 or 9 films altogether.
Mm-hmm. What's that relationship like?
It's great. It's great because we have we see things the same way. We appreciate the same architecture and art and style. Although he's a better dresser than I am.
Well, let's just go straight into the middle of your career. Let's go to Monsters Ball. So, how does Monsters Ball is kind of a it's not an anomaly, but at the height of independent films, I believe it was a $4 million picture.
$2.5
million picture.
Yeah. It came out in IMDb that it was $4 million.
million.
Production was $2.5 million. They may have spent another $1.5 million to promote it, maybe.
Right, but you're saying
to make prints,
start to finish,
above the line, everything was
$2.5 million. Yeah. And where did you shoot it again?
New Orleans.
It was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So much of the movie is through a barrier, through a window, from behind something, something obscuring. Was that conscious, or was it just because you were trying to get the camera away from the actors?
No, it's not trying to get the camera away from the actors. It's just something that just felt to me. You know, I don't know. I can't even say how I rationalized it at the time, but I probably have notes somewhere because I take notes on everything that we do or everything that I do. And actually, starting with that film, Marc and I knew that we had no time to really shoot the film. It was a very short schedule. So we sat in pre-production and we mapped out every scene. And I planned every shot in every scene beforehand, which is then a tradition that he decided to carry on through everything we did. Because I said, well, we got time. He said, no, I loved how we do that. Let's do that again. So we sit for weeks and get blueprints of every set or every location. And
do you ever abandon the plan?
We do when it seems when you're there and you go, well, you know, this is going to work better. Let's do this, or this leads to something else. But we go in with a plan. So basically, you know where the lighting and the dolly tracks are basically going to go. The art department knows things. The AD gets a good jump on things. It really helps a lot.
How much of this is about coverage versus saying in your mind you're pre-editing the scene?
It's pre-editing the scene.
Okay. You're not covering the scene. You're pre-editing the scene. Where they're going to get a piece here, and a piece here.
Well, it's supposed to have been that. In my mind, it was that. It was, you know, this is for the master. We come to that. We have a coverage of this piece and the other. But Marc has tended to like to have his options. So almost every setup that we do becomes a master, runs through the entire action again. So he has it all again from every shot.
There's one scene I want to ask you about in Monsters Ball. Sean Combs, before he's executed, sort of sitting in this very tepid room speaking to his son.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it just looks beautiful to me, to my eye.
Yeah.
What did that just sort of come out of the actual room, or?
Yeah, well, we had scouted the prison,
Yeah.
and we knew what the room and the feeling was like that, and just to try to give you that feeling of, desperation and isolation and sadness.
Tell us how you got the sort of the gritty appearance. I mean, obviously, when you're in Billy Bob Thornton, Peter Boyle's house,
Yeah.
it's pretty white trashy.
Oh yeah, you have to work with what you have. You
Right.
have to try to work with the production designer to make things coalesce for the image that you want, and we were both pretty strong about that. But we had such a low budget too. I mean, we went into this room and he insisted. I mean, it was the room, we had this house that we had gotten, couldn't tell the owner of the house certain elements of the script because they would never have approved us. They were a strong Baptist and wouldn't let us do things that in the
Got it.
script. But the living room was just, it was all white. It was horrible. It was unusable. So, but we were able to get in there and put on, wall paneling and tack it up and, fix it so it had more of a, texture and a little darker, brought it down, and it more felt like a kind of a white trash paneled, guy's
Yep.
home. Things like that, we tried to work with. But, it's a place. It's a very low budget. You get there and this is what you got to do, and you don't have a lot of time. We had 25 days to shoot the film, so.
Let's talk about the scene where Heath Ledger
Kills himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
He shoots himself in the chest, the center of the chest.
Yeah.
Was that as scripted, or was it?
I have no idea. I honestly don't remember why it went that way.
It just,
but
it's just one of the most. It's a completely shocking moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't see it coming at all,
No, because he doesn't go like that. He doesn't go like that.
Yeah.
It's like it's more like, wow, what just yeah.
It's completely unforgettable. I saw
Yeah.
it once, and
Yeah.
what other sequences you looked at from Monsters Ball that eventually you really, really loved the look of?
I don't know. I'm really proud of how that film came out, considering also that we had no money and it was such a short schedule.
Yep.
There's some, we're giving some homage to John Ford, John Wayne movies. There's a shot when Billy Bob comes out of the house holding the shotgun when they come up and push in up on him looking up.
You're thinking
Yeah.
of Stagecoach, of
Yeah,
course.
exactly.
The shot that made John
Yeah.
Wayne a star.
Yeah. There's I don't know, there's just a lot of, it's just a feeling. It's the whole thing. I don't dissect it into specifics. Finding Neverland I have more specific shots on that I'm proud of.
Let's talk about Finding
because
Neverland.
specific shots that I came up with totally, and suggested. And,
Let's talk about Finding Neverland for a
Sure.
second, because this movie is very creamy.
Mhm.
And the look to it is it's almost like alabaster, like you're touching a porcelain,
Mhm.
sculpture the whole time. The skin tones all seem to, between all of the actors, all seem to have this sort of beautiful, smooth quality, and the environments all kind of have this smoothness to them. I believe if I watched it again, it would still see that natural approach that you have, as natural as possible, but it's also very pretty. How did you go about sort of figuring that one out? Was it production design, or was it?
No, it was a combination of just a desire of making all the actors look good. It's an emotional film, and I didn't want to play too much on, building up harsh in any way with the lighting, or do anything that was, that would sort of drag you in one direction or another. I think it was important that you see all the actors to their best. It's kind of a bit like a fantasy at
Yeah.
the same time. Heightened reality, I would say, on that. I used a lot of diffusion on that, a lot of soft lighting, directional but soft, and just trying to keep it in that world, because it's always continually going between reality and fantasy, and trying to not to give you any pre-clues about, okay, now this is reality, this is fantasy. It's like always, it could shift into the fantasy moment at any time. So by keeping that kind of softer, rounder beauty lighting as much as possible, but sensibly, not wanting to beauty light somebody in a situation where it's absurd that, they're sitting by the window like this and they're flat lit from the front.
Right.
but still make them look good.
Right, but the movie's about Sir James Barry meeting this family and sort of getting the inspiration from
Right.
Peter Pan.
And going into his fantasy world, because he's very childish, and he's portrayed as having this very childish, childlike, I should say, ability to fantasize and to transcend the daily reality, and forget about his wife and all the family problems he was having at home, and just go into this other world.
And when you read the script, people have raved about this script. That
Mm-hmm.
It was a script that sort of rose out from.
Yeah. I mean, it was all there.
Right.
It was a very strong, good,
And
beautiful
so you
script.
just felt that you had to make this thing look straight up pretty.
Yeah.
Bigger budget on
Sure.
this one?
20 million.
Okay.
So we went
now-
from $2.5 million to 20 million.
20 million.
And
Okay.
to us,
And
it
this
was
is-
like, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, is that a little bit, as a DP, again, this is something people watching this I think should know, is it a little bit nerve-wracking? Is there a negative side, or is it just all good?
The downside is that they still treat it in a way that it's no money, and no matter how much money you have, it's never really enough.
Who's they?
The producers, and you start also thinking, well, now we've got this, we should be able to do this, and it's like, we want to do this, and now your $500 camera package is a $50,000 camera package, and you don't have enough money for that, it seems to be.
So in other words, oh great, I can have a techno crane
Right.
for 20 days. No,
Right.
really, we can only afford it for 5.
Or 2.
Or
Yeah. And oh wow, with that much money we should be able to do. Yeah, but the production design is now going to cost 7,000 times more than the last one did, and the costume department is using $1 million worth of costumes. And you have a few more days to shoot, but it's a much more ambitious film. So do you really have that much more to shoot? No, you still have a tight schedule. The good things about that film,
yeah.
there were several shots that I proposed to Marc and went over really great. We had this scene where Barry and his wife go up the stairs after the dinner, and they have separate bedrooms, and she's going to go into hers, and he's going into his, and he says goodnight, and there's a little bit of tension between them, and she opens up the door and goes into her bedroom, and he opens the door and goes into his, and I said the day before, wouldn't it be great, because the next scene, and I'm always really watching for transitions.
Which is a
cuts.
huge thing for real
Really
cinematographers.
important. It's really important. You
Yes.
want to know where the scene's going to cut to, and I try to, when I can, give the editor something that makes a really nice transition. They don't always use it. Sometimes they decide to do something else. But if you can give them something, so in this one, I said, wouldn't that be great? The next scene is there. He's out in the park with the family, going to teach him to fly a kite, and they're having a picnic. I said, wouldn't it be great if instead of he goes in, closes the door, fade to black, whatever, come up, next day he's out. He opens the door, and he goes through, and you see that it's the park. And he just walks into the park, because that's sort of his whole fantasy world, is that he's getting away from his wife, and from this reality. And this is where his new fantasy and his new reality is this family and with the kids. And so I said, let's do a green screen and have him go in there, and we can shoot a plate. And of course, the room that he was going into wasn't really a room, it was a closet. It was about as deep from here to the wall, and it was a curved thing. But we managed to put a green screen in there and light it enough that we could get, so he just opens the door, steps in, and closes the door behind him, and we got enough to
Pretty
put
big challenge if it's that tight, not to get a splash on him.
Yeah, well, we had to clean it up in post,
Right.
And it worked, and I'm really proud of that shot. Another shot is when they're at the play, and they see, the Peter Pan character, and she says, dying is such a big adventure. And I said, at that point, this is where the kid is having that impact, because his mother is dying, and he has the reality and this whole revelation to him. Let's start off on the tail of the kite, and can we make a move that we go up and go right up into the balcony into the kid's face? And so I talked to the visual effects people and to Marc, and figured a way, and we got 2 Milo motion control rigs and married 2 real shots together. But I said, I don't want it just going up. And I did design this whole thing where it goes up and it flies around, and it has to circle and see the theater and capture this fantasy flight of how a kite would really be, and swoop up and land in the kid's face. And we were able to do it with 2 Milo rig shots practically, and just do a marriage between the 2 shots. And little visual effects clean up here and there and take some things out of the shot and all, and did that.
But when you finally
saw it, it's like, it's this breath, which I really loved. And then the final one that I remember of those was, we were setting up to shoot the last shot of the film. But we didn't know it was going to be the last shot of the film. It's when Barry and the kid are sitting on the bench,
Yep.
and they have this talk, and I'm sitting there, I'm saying to Mark, I said, the day before, I think, we were scouting it. I said, wouldn't it be great if when they're sitting on the bench, because it's really the end of the film, we're on the bench and they disappear, they dissolve. And you're just left with the bench and maybe his hat or the cane or something. Because now it's eternity. You know, the kids, they're going off to the rest of their life, whatever happened doesn't. It's just a way to get into, continuing the fantasy thing of it too. And I remember Mark going, he almost jumped up and down. He goes, oh, thank you, now I have the last shot for the film. Now we have it. And I said, oh great, it's so perfect. And he said, but can we be moving when it's happening?
Okay, well now...
And I said, yeah, but I mean, we're going to have
to
to get motion control to do that because we can try it, but then the VFX people were with us. Kevin Haug, who did all the VFX, it was great, said we really need to do it with motion control because of the bench and the slats and, it had to be frame accurate.
It's just impossible.
So we got, from the mill, we got just a simple motion control dolly, a sled.
Yeah.
And of course, the first time we shot it, the motion control rig failed.
Failed.
So we had to go back and reshoot that a second day. Was one of our few things we went and did a reshoot.
But you got it.
But we got it, and it's, it was magical. It's just, it said so much about
The
story and the film, and people love it, and I love it, and I'm really proud of it.
So let's go to Quantum of Solace.